Okay, I was reading Truth in Lending Advertising and got out a part about triggering terms and prohibited acts, but realized that I wasn't recording myself. So as I go back up to page 336, if an advertisement states specific terms, it must state only those terms actually offered by the bank. All disclosures required to be made in advertisements must be made clearly and conspicuously. If the ad states a finance charge, it must state the annual percentage rate. If the rate may be increased after consummation, the advertisement must state this fact. In an advertisement for a loan not secured by a dwelling, only the APR may be stated, except that a simple annual rate or periodic rate applied to a balance may be stated in conjunction with, but not more conspicuously than, the APR. In an advertisement for a loan to be secured by a dwelling, only the APR may be stated, except that a simple annual rate applied to the balance may be stated in conjunction with, but not more conspicuously than, the APR. If any of the triggering terms, which include, if any of the triggering terms are used, then you must make additional disclosures. The triggering terms here are the amount or percentage of down payment in a credit sale transaction, the number of payments or period of repayment, the amount of payments, and the amount of finance charge. If any of these are stated, then the APR must be stated, and whether or not it can increase after consummation. Terms of repayment reflecting the repayment obligations, including, if applicable, a balloon payment, and also the amount or percentage of the down payment for credit sales only. And there's a little bit about the format of the advertisements. For instance, it doesn't apply to TV and radio ads or envelopes. And then there's more description about pop-up and banner ads on the internet, as long as the place where the triggering term is used. And on another page, the mandatory disclosures being made, and clearly on the page where the triggering term is used, describe that fact, then you're okay. If the ad discloses a simple rate of interest and more than one simple rate of interest will apply during the loan term, the ad must disclose the following in a clear and conspicuous manner, that is, with equal prominence and in close proximity to the rate disclosed, which is each simple interest rate that will apply, and in a variable rate transaction, a rate based on a index and margin that is reasonably current, the period of time each rate of interest will apply, and the APR for the loan, which may be disclosed with greater prominence. If the ad discloses an amount of a payment, the ad must also disclose the amount in a clear and conspicuous manner, that is, with equal prominence and in close proximity to the applicable triggering term, and that those requirements are the amount of each payment that will apply over the term of the loan, including, if applicable, any balloon payment. In a variable rate transaction, the payment that will apply calculated based on an index or margin that is reasonably current. And if the loan will be secured by a first lien on a dwelling, the fact that payments do not include taxes and insurance, and that actual payments will be higher, and that must also be in close proximity. Ads on television and radio that contain triggering terms may meet the requirements for additional disclosures by either disclosing all of the additionally required information or disclosing the APR, and if it may increase after closing, that fact, and a toll-free number or collect call number, and stating that the number may be used by consumers to obtain additional cost information. In ads distributed in paper form or on the internet for loans secured by a consumer's principal dwelling, where the ad states that the credit may exceed the fair market value of the property, the ad must also state that the interest on the amount of the credit that exceeds the fair market value is not deductible for federal tax purposes, and that the consumer should consult a tax advisor for further information regarding the deductibility of interest and charges. Now I'm in prohibited acts, where we can't use the word fixed incorrectly. For instance, if it's being used with regards to a product that is not fixed, then variable rate mortgage, adjustable rate mortgage, and ARM ought to be used before the word fixed, and that if we are using the word fixed in an advertisement for an adjustable rate mortgage and or an advertisement for an adjustable rate mortgage and a fixed rate mortgage. Then every time you use the word fixed, you have to describe clearly what period that is fixed next to the word. Are left off at misleading comparisons. They may not make any comparisons between an actual or hypothetical rate or payment and any rate or payment that would be available on the loan for less than the full term of the loan unless the ad contains a clear and conspicuous comparison to the required rate and payment disclosures, and if the ad is for a variable rate loan and the advertised payment or simple rate is based on the index and margin that will use to make subsequent rate and payment adjustments on the loan, the ad contain an equally prominent statement in close proximity to the payment on or rate that they are subject to adjustment and the time period when the first adjustment will occur. Misrepresentations about government endorsements may not make any statement in an advertisement that the product is a government loan program, government supported loan, or is otherwise endorsed by any local, state, or federal government program unless the ad is for an FHA, VA, or similarly sponsored product that is in fact government endorsed. Misleading use of the lender's name. A lender may not use the name of the consumer's current lender in an advertisement not sent by the consumer's lender unless it discloses with equal prominence the name of the person or entity making the advertisement and includes a clear and conspicuous statement that the person advertising is not associated or acting on behalf of the consumer's lender. Then you have further misleading claims of debt elimination, misleading use of the term counselor, and misleading foreign language advertisements. For debt elimination, the bank may not make any claims in an advertisement that a loan will eliminate debt or result in a waiver of forgiveness of a consumer's existing debt. Nor may a advertisement use the term counselor to refer to a for-profit lender or a broker that are involved in offering, originating, or selling mortgages. And lastly, lenders may not provide some triggering terms or required disclosures only in a foreign language while providing other triggering terms or required disclosures only in English in the same advertisement. Disclosure requirements as of August 1st of 2015 is like a whole new section here. And it begins with the form of mortgage-related disclosures. 1. The required disclosures must be in writing, conspicuously segregated from all other disclosures and information provided. 2. The following disclosures must be made in the same order and with master headings, headings, subheadings, and labels in the same manner as the model disclosure in Appendix H. That is general information. This is the form of mortgage-related disclosures. Within the Code of Federal Regulations, this is 1026.37. The general information includes loan terms, projected payments, cost at closing, alternative calculating cash to close table for transactions without a seller, closing cost details, loan costs, closing cost details, other costs, closing cost totals, calculating cost to cash to close, summary of the buyer's transaction, summary of the seller's transaction, loan disclosures, adjustable payment table, adjustable interest rate table, and loan calculations, other disclosures, questions, notice, contact information, signature statement. If a master heading, subheading, label, or other designation contains the word estimated in Appendix H, it must contain the word estimated in the disclosure for mortgage transactions that are subject to RESPA. A disclosure must match that in Appendix H. -25. For any other mortgage loan, the disclosure must be similar to Appendix H25. This form may be translated into languages other than English. And general rules for early disclosures on mortgage loans. This is from the Code of Federal Regulations 1026.19e. In a closed-end consumer loan secured by real property other than a reverse mortgage, the creditor must provide a good faith estimate of the disclosure. If a mortgage broker supplies the good faith estimate, the obligation is satisfied. And you have the timing waiver and pre-disclosure fees on this page. I'm still kind of questioning why this is here. I really feel that we discussed this enough in the beginning, but we decided to circle back around to the early disclosures. The timing. Again, the good faith estimate must be delivered or mailed not later than the 3rd business day after the creditor receives the consumer's application. These disclosures must be provided not later than the 7th business day before consummation, except in the case of a loan secured by a timeshare. A consumer is deemed to have received the disclosure 3 business days after they are delivered or placed in the mail. Waiver. If the loan is needed to meet a bona fide personal financial emergency, the consumer may modify or waive the 7 business day waiting period after receiving the early disclosures. To effect the waiver, the consumer must give the creditor a dated written statement that describes the emergency and waives or extends the waiting period. The waiver must be signed by all consumers who are primarily liable on an obligation. Printed forms for this purpose are prohibited. Pre-disclosure fees. No person may impose a fee on the consumer prior to the consumer's receipt of the early disclosures as indicated an intent to proceed with the transactions. A creditor may impose a bona fide fee to obtain a credit report before the consumer has received the early disclosures. A creditor may provide written estimates of fees and costs before the early disclosure, but such writing may not be in a form of the official early disclosures and must bear the following legend at the top of the page in 12-point type. Your actual rate, payment, and cost could be higher. Get an official loan estimate before choosing a loan. Creditors may not require that the consumer provide any application information until the early disclosures are provided. Meaning, you can submit an application, but you shouldn't be required to give pay stubs and justify that information until after you receive a GFE. Allowable increases in the fees disclosed. No, good faith estimates is a presumption of good faith. The good faith estimate is deemed to be in good faith if the charges paid by the consumer do not exceed the amount disclosed or the allowable tolerances, and the allowable increases in fees disclosed in an estimate for a third-party charge or recording fee is in good faith if 1. The aggregate amount of charges for third-party services and recording fees paid by the consumer does not exceed the aggregate disclosed by more than 10%, and the charges to the third party is not paid to the creditor or an affiliate, and lastly, the creditor permits the consumer to shop for this service. D. Variations for certain charges. An estimate of the following charges is in good faith if it is consistent with the best information reasonably available to the creditor, regardless of whether the amount actually paid exceeds that disclosed. The variations for certain charges in the good faith estimate that are referred to here as prepaid interest, property insurance premiums, amounts paid into escrow, and charges paid to third parties selected by the consumer that are not on the list provided by the creditor. And lastly, charges paid to third parties for services not required by the creditor may be paid to an affiliate. Revised estimates. For determining good faith, the creditor may use a revised estimate of charge instead of the original estimate in the revision, if the revision is due to any of the following reasons: a change in circumstance which causes the aggregate charges to increase by more than 10%, including the following circumstances: A, B, and C. A, an extraordinary event beyond the control of the interested party. B, information specific to the consumer or a transaction relied upon by the creditor was inaccurate or changed, and new information specific to the consumer or transaction arises. The consumer becomes ineligible for the previously disclosed charge because the change of circumstance affected the consumer's creditworthiness or value of the security. The consumer requests the changes. The points or lender credits change because the interest rate was not locked when the estimates are given. The creditor must give a revised estimate when the interest rate is locked. The consumer indicates an intent to proceed with the transaction more than 10 business days after the disclosures are provided, and on a construction loan, if the creditor reasonably believes that settlement will occur more than 60 days after the disclosures are given, the creditor may provide revised disclosures as long as the original disclosures clearly stated that such revised disclosures may be issued. Providing revised disclosures, I think, is the last part of this section, if a creditor issues a revised estimate, it must be provided within 3 business days of the receipt of the information that established the reason for the revision. Revised early disclosures may not be provided after the provision of the final disclosure statement, and the consumer must receive a revised disclosure at least 4 business days prior to the loan consummation. And if the disclosure is not provided in person, the consumer is considered to have received it 3 business days after the creditor mails it. There was once a question about if it's being emailed, is that 3 days circumvented? And I still don't know the answer to that question. It's a good question.